the envelope down, Darius. You paid for the walls, but my daughter owns half this house now.
Who told you that?
I signed the equity acknowledgement. Dad helped us. Please don't embarrass me.
You welcome this family, or you leave tonight.
Is he serious?
I won't sign away my home.
Victor snatched the envelope. Another trick?
Another trick?
He tore it in half and dropped the pieces into a champagne bucket. A woman near the fireplace stood so fast her chair scraped the floor. "Victor, stop!" Too late. She stared at the broken seal. "That was a Northline original." He laughed. "So?" Her eyes moved to me. "Because only Northline's founding authority is allowed to carry that seal." Then she looked back at Victor. "And you may have just destroyed the only document that could keep your company alive." The room did not gasp. That is the part people never believe when I describe it. 40 guests in a restored house with marble underfoot, and the only sound was ice settling in a bucket where 2 halves of navy paper were going soft. Victor recovered faster than I expected. He always did. "And who are you," he said to her, "to threaten a man in front of his own family?" "Mara Mercer." She did not extend her hand. "Northline Board. Every original carries a serial mark in the wax. Destruction of one gets reported. That is all I am telling you tonight." I watched him decide something. It took him less than 3 seconds. Then he turned his back on her, which was the smartest thing he did all evening, because it moved the room's attention off the envelope and on to me. "You hear that?" he said to the guests. "Secret papers. Secret boards. My daughter has lived in this house for 1.5 years, and her name is on nothing. Not the deed, not the accounts. He keeps a folder in his jacket like a man keeping a leash in his pocket. I have been called worse things by better people. What tightened my chest was that Elena said nothing against it." I looked at her. "Tell him." She held my eyes. That was the cruelest part. She did not look away. "I asked you to put my name on the house," she said. 3 times. You kept saying we would discuss it later." That was true. I want to be honest about the parts that were true, because everything Victor built that night, he built on a foundation I poured myself. My phone buzzed. I stepped toward the hall and read the notification. An emergency ownership notice had been filed against the property. Timestamp: 2 hours before the first guest arrived. I read it twice. The caterers had not yet brought out the second tray. Nothing about this began at my party. My party was the last step, not the first. The notice did not make Victor an owner. It made the title disputed, which is a smaller thing and a worse thing. Until a reviewer cleared it, I could not sell the house, borrow against it, transfer it, or move it inside my own company. A single filed page had frozen the largest thing I had ever built with my hands. And the equity acknowledgement Elena had just signed in front of 40 witnesses was not the plan. It was the seasoning. It was there to make an old lie taste like a family agreement. Someone had prepared this for weeks. Someone had needed my wife's signature and my house's address and, for reasons I did not yet understand, needed her relatives standing in my foyer that night with luggage. The suitcases went up before I could stop them. Elena's aunt took the stairs first, wheeling a hard-shell bag over the runner. Her cousin followed with 2 garment bags. Her mother carried nothing and apologized to no one. "The East Wing belongs to Elena's family until this is settled," Victor announced, the way a man announces a toast. I moved to the base of the curved staircase and stood in the middle of it. I did not shout. I have never won an argument by raising my voice, and I have lost several by trying. "This is a private home," I said. "Nobody is sleeping in it tonight who was not invited to sleep in it." The east wing had been locked since the contractors finished. There is a keypad at the landing. I set the codes myself. Elena walked up 4 steps, past my shoulder, and entered a code. The lock chimed and released. It was the preparation that struck me, not the betrayal. She had asked me for that code in the spring, and I had given it to her and forgotten. She had held it, and she had chosen the moment to use it, in front of guests. A member of the security staff we had hired for the evening came in from the terrace. He looked at Victor, he looked at me. He asked the only question a working man can ask in a room like that. "Who has authority here?" "This is my home too," Elena said. "Please escort my husband outside until he calms down." I have replayed that sentence more times than I have replayed any other in my life. Not the equity acknowledgement, not the claim, that one. The man did not put a hand on me. He did not have to. I walked out of my own housewarming through a double row of people who had lifted glasses to me 40 minutes earlier, past a caterer holding a tray she had nowhere to set down, past a business partner who studied his shoes as though they were new. Victor spoke as I reached the door. He was standing beside the luggage. "By tomorrow morning, everyone will understand who actually owns this place." Outside, the driveway lights came on because I had programmed them to. "Your house keeps taking care of you while you are being removed from it." I had lost more than dignity. My laptop and every renovation binder sat in the library, behind a door I had just been walked past. My guests had watched a man be corrected in his own foyer, and business travels on impressions faster than it travels on facts. Mara Mercer followed me out. She stopped 1 step from the threshold and lowered her voice so far I had to turn my head. She did not call me Mr. Cole. "Founder protocol requires disclosure now." "Not yet." She waited. I did not explain. After a moment, she nodded once, the way people nod when they disagree and intend to remember it, and went back inside to collect her coat. I stood on my own front walk for 11 minutes. 3 things happened on my phone. My access code was suspended. A new code was generated and assigned to a user labeled V. Hale, and the library door registered an entry. I called Elena from the car. She answered on the second ring, which told me she had been holding the phone. "They'll stay until Dad's company is stable," she said. "That's all this is." "Elena, what does my house have to do with his company?" The pause went on so long, I checked the screen to see if the call had dropped. "More than you ever let me understand." 20 minutes later, a photograph arrived from a number I did not recognize. I have never learned who sent it. It was a page from a lender package, shot at an angle, the corner of a conference table visible at the edge. The property was listed as supplemental family security. Claim value, 1/2 of the equity. That is when this stopped being a family scene and became arithmetic. Victor did not want a bedroom. He wanted an asset with a number attached to it, and he wanted to walk into a lender review the next morning holding it, which gave me a deadline instead of a grievance. If I could not prove the claim was manufactured before that review, the dispute itself became the weapon. A frozen title, a signed acknowledgement, a wife's public agreement. That is enough leverage to make a man sign a settlement just to get his own front door back. I slept 4 hours in a hotel 8 minutes from a house I owned. I needed to know why she signed. Not the legal reason, the other one. The pieces came to me in fragments over the next day, the way real understanding usually arrives, out of order and mostly by accident. An old voicemail from Victor, still on my phone from 2 winters ago, back when I thought he liked me. Darius, family thing Sunday. Nobody in this family gets left outside, you hear me? Nobody. He said that constantly. I used to find it warm. Elena's mother was sick for 4 years when Elena was a teenager. Victor sold a duplex, took a second crew job, and kept the household intact.
Elena has told me that story 6 times in our marriage, and her voice changes every time. He was the reason the family did not scatter. That is not a lie, he told her. That is a debt she has carried since she was 15, and it taught her a rule she never questioned. In this family, nobody is allowed to say no. Then there was my part. 8 months earlier, at our kitchen island, Elena had said her father's company looked shaky and asked whether we should be worried. I said, I handled it. I did not explain what it was. I told myself I was protecting a proud man's reputation with his own daughter. What I was actually doing was keeping her outside a decision that involved her family, her marriage, and money, and then congratulating myself for it. She heard it as a door closing. Every time I said I had handled something, she learned a little more that she lived inside my results and never inside my choices. So when Victor told her the company would collapse, that dozens of his people would lose their jobs, that my portfolio was enormous and my generosity was rationed, and that signing an acknowledgement was only formalizing what marriage already means, he was not pushing against a wall. He was pushing against a hairline crack I had spent 2 years making. Her feeling was real. Signing away my house was still wrong. Both of those are true, and the story does not work unless you hold them at the same time. The evidence itself was straightforward at first, and it favored me. Coal Restoration Group's accounts showed structural work, roofing, foundation remediation, electrical, and millwork. All paid on company checks, all traceable, all mine. Then my attorney sent me the file Victor had circulated to the reviewer, and I found the thing that would nearly finish me. It was a video. Our anniversary dinner 2 years ago, filmed by Elena's cousin. I am holding a glass. I am 40 seconds into a toast I remember badly. Everything I build is for you. I meant it the way any man means it after 2 glasses of wine. In the version Victor circulated, the clip started at "Everything I build" and ended at "For you," and it was labeled "Verbal Acknowledgement of Joint Ownership." You cannot cross-examine a video of your own happiness. I had one advantage. I know how construction money moves, because moving it is my profession. Victor's claim named a figure, $600,000 contributed toward the restoration. That is not a number you can wave at. If it existed somewhere, in a transfer, a check, a wire, a materials order.
I pulled our project's cloud backups from my company's server, which I could still reach because it was never in the house. The vendor invoices Victor had attached were 3 documents from a supplier with a name generic enough to be printed on anything. Building Services Group. The line item on each read, Family Renovation Contribution. The amounts were right. The dates were right. The delivery addresses were wrong. All 3 shipments had gone to a site on the north side of the county. A mid-rise hail development had started, stalled, and abandoned 2 years ago. I drove out and looked at it through a chain-link fence. Victor had not given $600,000 to my house. He had taken $600,000 of his own failed project's costs, changed the descriptions, and stapled them to my address. I remember standing at that fence and feeling something close to relief. I thought, this is a paper problem, and paper problems have paper answers. That afternoon, my phone rang twice. The first call was my attorney. Elena had submitted a sworn statement directly to the lender's reviewer.
In it, she stated that her father had given a portion of the contribution in cash, that I had known and preferred not to record it, and that I had promised her the house was shared property. She had not been asked for it. She had sent it herself. The second call was Elena. You gave him the office code, I said. He needed the original renovation binder. Elena, that binder is evidence in a claim against me. It's the truth, Darius. Her voice was very level. She is at her most controlled when she is furthest out on a limb. You protected his pride with secrets. I'm protecting his life's work with the truth. Later that evening, my attorney found the last piece and sent it in a single line. A lender inspection had been scheduled at the property for 9 the next morning. I made him read me the criteria twice. To qualify for the extension hail development needed, Victor had to demonstrate 3 things. Supplemental collateral existed. Family members had lawful access to the asset, and a co-owner was in actual residence. And there it was. The suitcases were not grief. They were not desperation. They were not a family with nowhere to go. They were staging. You cannot photograph a claim. You can photograph luggage on a landing and a coat on a hook and a toothbrush by a sink. Victor needed a lender to walk through my house at 9 the next morning and see a family living in it. 2 hours later, I confirmed the rest. The Hale family's corporate apartment downtown, 4 bedrooms, furnished, paid through the end of the year, had never been vacated. Utilities active, mail still delivered. Nobody was homeless. Nobody had ever been homeless. They had rolled suitcases across my foyer as props. My project manager, a careful man named Curtis, kept a habit I had complained about for years. He backed the renovation ledger up to a personal drive because he did not trust the cloud. He drove it to my hotel at midnight. The ledger was complete. Every structural line paid by Coal Restoration Group. Not one income and transfer from Victor Hale or any entity connected to him. The vendor invoices matched the abandoned Hale project by purchase order number, and the deed history showed the house had been acquired by my holding company 9 months before Elena and I were married. 9 months before. You cannot retroactively contribute to a purchase that closed before you met the buyer's wife. At 8 the next morning, I stood in my own driveway with a folder and asked for a short mediation before the inspection. Victor agreed instantly, which should have warned me. Men who are winning never rush. They set up in my formal front room.
Victor at one end, Elena beside him in a pastel pink blouse. Two representatives from the lender, the reviewer, Mara Mercer, present as a Northline board observer and nothing more. I laid it out plainly, because that is the only way any of this survives being said out loud.
Bank records. The house was paid for by my company. Title records. The purchase predated the marriage. Vendor delivery logs. The $600,000 went to a job site 14 miles away. Purchase order numbers matching a hail project. Mara spoke exactly 3 times. An emergency notice creates a dispute. It does not create ownership. A lender cannot accept a half interest supported only by a spouse's statement. And a collateral substitution of this type requires original founder consent from Northline. This package does not contain it. Victor lost his temper for the first time. Not loudly. His hand came down flat on the table, and the reviewer's pen rolled. You are going to sit in my daughter's living room and tell me what my own family gave? I'm telling you what the deliveries say. I could have ended it there and enjoyed it. I want to be honest. I wanted to. Instead, I put the folder down and made the offer I had written at 4 that morning. Withdraw the claim. State on the record that no contribution was made. In exchange, I will personally help you find legitimate restructuring, and whatever happens to Hale Development, I want the crews protected. Your framers didn't forge anything. They shouldn't pay for it. The reviewer wrote that down. The lender representatives looked at each other. For about 90 seconds, I was winning. Then I turned to Elena, because she was the only door left, and I thought it was standing open. Did your father put $1 into this house? She looked at Victor. She did not answer. I have thought a great deal about that silence. I believed, sitting there, that she was gathering courage. She opened her bag and took out a document and laid it on the table. A new sworn statement notarized that morning. Under oath, my wife stated that her father had given the money to her personally, that she had moved it into the renovation fund herself, that I had known its source, and that I had verbally agreed the house belonged to both of us. Attached, the anniversary clip. Everything I build is for you. Victor did not gloat. That is what I remember. He simply slid the statement toward the reviewer like a man passing the salt. Sworn testimony from a spouse is not a receipt. It does not prove a transfer, but it changes what a proceeding is required to do about it. And it did. The claim was not dismissed. By that afternoon, there was a temporary occupancy order. The Hale family could remain in the East Wing while the dispute was reviewed. I was barred from changing the locks or the access codes. My library, my office, my binders, my drives was sealed from both sides, which sounds even-handed and was not, because they were living inside the building and I was not. Then it spread. A commercial client with 3 restoration projects in my pipeline paused their contract pending clarity on the ownership dispute. That is a polite sentence that costs a great deal over 3 years. And Victor talked. To guests, to 2 people in the trade, to anyone who would repeat it, that I hid assets from my wife, that I ran everything through a holding company so she would own nothing, that a woman had been forced to swear an oath to get her name near her own front door. Every piece of that was constructed on something I had actually done. I drove past the house that evening and stopped at the curb. Through the front window I could see Victor standing in my living room with a phone at his ear.
gesturing at the ceiling I had rebuilt joist by joist. For the first time, I understood that a locked door could hurt, even when I still owned the key. I had proved I paid for the house. It had not been enough. It was never going to be enough, because the fight was not about who paid.
So I stopped arguing about who owned the house. I started proving why Victor needed everyone to believe he did. I did the work myself. My attorney could have subpoenaed things eventually, and eventually was not available. The lender review had been continued to the end of the week. I called the supplier first. Building Services Group answered on a cell phone, which told me most of what I needed. The owner was a man who had done real work for Hale Development for 11 years. I asked him about 3 invoices, read him the purchase order numbers, and listened to him go quiet. He had not forged anything. He had issued invoices for materials delivered to a Hale job site. Someone else had changed the description line afterward. He offered to send me his own copies. His copies said structural steel. Then I chased the smaller thing, the thing nobody protects because nobody thinks of it as evidence. The moving company. 6 suitcases and 4 garment bags do not travel by themselves. Somebody scheduled a van. It took a day and a half and 4 phone calls. The dispatcher read me the work order because I told her the truth about why I was asking. The job had been booked 19 days before my housewarming. The billing account was Hale Development. The ordering contact was an assistant in Victor's office. And in the notes field, where dispatchers write whatever the client tells them so the crew knows what they are walking into, someone had typed, "Occupancy staging for lender inspection." I read it 4 times. That is not how a family describes moving in with a daughter. That is how a transaction describes itself when it thinks nobody outside the room will ever read the paperwork. I called Elena that night. She picked up in a room with an echo. I think she was standing in my kitchen. "Did you know the movers were booked 19 days early?" "Yes." No hesitation. She has never once lied to me directly. She has only ever let other people's lies stand. Dad said it needed to look official. He said nobody would be hurt if the lender believed us for one morning. And what did you think would happen after that morning? The echo went on for a long time. She did not answer. I did not push. I had learned that week that silence is not a neutral thing. My mother told me once, in a rented room, after a cousin used her signature as security on a loan she never understood, and she lost the only house we ever had. A signature can leave the room before the truth catches up. I was 13. I watched our furniture go into cardboard boxes on a sidewalk in September. That is why I build houses out of ruined ones. That is why I have a rule I've never broken. A home should never become collateral for someone else's fear. I had proof the residency was staged. I had proof the money went elsewhere. What I did not have was proof Victor knew the claim itself was invalid. Intent is the hardest thing in the world to put on paper, and without it, a man can always retreat behind a misunderstanding. Then, on Thursday, a clear plastic bag arrived at my hotel. Inside were the torn pieces of a navy envelope, dried stiff, the wax cracked but intact. A young server from the catering staff had fished them out of the champagne bucket that night because a woman by the fireplace had told her not to let anyone throw them away. She had kept them in her car for 4 days, not knowing what else to do with them.
I laid them out under the desk lamp and worked for 2 hours, and I found it because I was looking at the paper instead of the seal. One fragment, a plain piece of interior sheet, no printing on it, carried a silver key impression that was backwards, reversed, mirror image, pressed while the wax was still soft. Victor had not only destroyed the envelope.
In the minutes after he tore it, he had taken the warm seal and pressed it onto a blank sheet to lift an impression of it. You do not do that by accident. You do that when you intend to reproduce something. Mara agreed to meet me in the hotel's business lounge. She looked at the fragments for a long time before she said anything. Each Northline original carries a unique ridge pattern in the wax. It is not decorative. It identifies which original it is. And a collateral substitution needs founder consent. Consent carried by that seal, yes. She set down the fragment. A copy is not consent. A copy is a forgery. But Northline cannot act on an inference, Mr. Cole. The board does not open a founder review because a fragment looks suspicious. We would need to see the document he used it on. Then she asked the question she had been circling since my foyer. Are you prepared to trigger founder review? Not if it destroys everyone who works for him. She let that sit exactly as long as it deserved. Then you are protecting the same man who is taking your home. Victor's answer came Friday morning, and it was better than anything I had credited him with. He gathered 14 people from my housewarming into the private room of a restaurant and made a statement. No lawyers, coffee, and a family man with his hands open. He said I had concealed my financing from my wife, that I used my company to punish a family, that he had built things his whole life without ever needing a hidden board, and that he had watched his daughter live in a mansion for a year and a half without owning a single nail in it. Elena stood beside him. She wore pastel pink. She has always understood what a room reads. She did not say I was cruel. She never has, not once, in any of this. She said one sentence. My husband believes protection means making every decision alone. That afternoon, a development partner withdrew from a project we had been assembling for 8 months. He was apologetic. He was also gone. And then, that same evening, the reviewer forwarded me the revised collateral package Hale Development had submitted for the continued review. 11 pages, cleaner than the first. The claim restructured, the contribution restated, the residency documented with photographs of luggage in my east wing. On the final page, beneath a paragraph titled Substitution Consent, was a silver key wax seal. To prove it was a forgery, someone would have to state on the record who was actually permitted to carry that seal. There was exactly one person alive who could say that. The continued review was held in the ballroom-style dining room of my own house, because that is where a lender holds a review when the asset in question is the room they are standing in. 9 people at my table. The lender's 2 representatives, the reviewer, my attorney, Victor's attorney, Victor, Elena, Mara Mercer, me. Victor arrived confident, and he had earned it. His daughter's sworn testimony still stood. The occupancy order still stood. The photographs looked exactly like a family living in a house, and his package now carried what appeared to be founder consent. I set the plastic bag of torn navy paper in the middle of the table. Before we go through the package, I said, I need to correct something I should have corrected 2 years ago. Victor smiled.
By all means. Northline did not save Hale Development because your numbers were strong. It saved the company because your employees deserved another chance. He looked at Mara, then back at me, and something in his face began to slip. And who exactly are you speaking for? For the person who founded it. Nobody applauded. I want that understood. There was no gasp and no moment of glory.
There was a room full of professionals recalculating a file, and one man realizing that the ground had been different from the beginning. I said the rest quickly, because the shortest version was the truest one. I founded Northline Community Capital after watching too many families lose homes to papers they signed while frightened. Northline buys distressed construction debt and restructures it to keep crews employed. I kept my name off it because a fund with a founder's face on it stops being about the work, and because I did not want any borrower believing they had been approved as a favor. 2 years ago, Northline acquired $18 million of Hale Development's debt. That is the only reason Victor's company still existed to hold a lender review at all. I did not know Victor would go after my house. I did not know because I was contractually barred from touching individual files. That was the whole point of the structure. And I never told Elena. Not once. I told myself it was to protect her father's pride. That was my mistake, I said, to the table and to her. I called it protection. It was not. But my silence did not put anyone's name on my deed. Then the cost arrived, exactly as I had known it would. Mara opened her folder. Because I had disclosed founder status in an active matter, Northline's board was now required to open a founder review. Every protection extended to Hale Development was suspended pending that review. The collateral package would be examined in full. And I would face a conflict of interest inquiry because I had just publicly acknowledged a personal stake in a borrower's affairs. 2 years of anonymity gone in 90 seconds. Northline could strip me of operational authority when the review closed. There was a real chance I had just walked out of my own company to keep my own house. Victor's attorney recovered before Victor did. None of that touches the civil claim, he said. Whatever Mr. Cole does or does not own, Mrs. Cole has sworn her father contributed to this property. That is correct, Mara said. Northline can invalidate a collateral instrument. Northline cannot determine who owns a house. That rests on testimony. Victor turned to his daughter, and his voice changed completely. Softer, warmer. The voice from the voicemail. The voice that had held a family together through 4 years of illness. Elena, tell them what your husband promised you. She did not answer immediately. Victor kept going, and to his credit, he did not aim at my money. He aimed at the crack. He said I had bought the house through a holding company so my wife would never appear on a document. He said I had let her live in a home she had no voice in. He said I had quietly rescued his company so he would owe me something he could never repay, and that this was not generosity, it was ownership by another name. That's who he is, Victor said. He makes everybody dependent and calls it protection. Some of that landed. I felt it land. You're right about part of it, I said. I was wrong to call secrecy protection. Elena asked me 3 times to put her name on the deed, and I said we would discuss it later, and I never did. And that was cowardice dressed as prudence. I own that, I let the silence hold for a beat. But secrecy did not put your name on my deed. Then I made the offer I had been building since 4 that morning, and it cost me more than the disclosure had. Withdraw the claim in full. State on the record that no contribution was made. Step down from operational control of Hale Development. The company enters restructuring under professional management, and the crews keep their jobs and their benefits through the transition. The house is never named as collateral in any instrument again, and I would recuse myself permanently from every Northline decision touching the file, so no one could ever say the outcome was personal. I could have foreclosed. With the board suspension in motion, I could have let the debt call and watched him lose everything in 11 days. 91 people work for Hale Development. None of them tore an envelope. Victor's attorney leaned toward him and whispered for a long time. Victor did not look at him. He looked at his daughter. I turned to her too. Elena, did your father ever give us $600,000 for this house? Elena, Victor said, this family doesn't leave people outside. She looked at him. Then she looked past him, through the doorway, to the base of the curved staircase where 6 suitcases were still stacked because nobody had ever intended to unpack them. No, she said. He told me to say he did. Victor's attorney stopped writing. Mrs. Cole, the reviewer said carefully, you understand you are amending sworn testimony. I do. Her voice did not shake, which somehow made it worse. I want it on the record. I knew the claim was not true. My father did not contribute to this house. He asked me to say he did, and I said it, and then I swore to it. She turned to me, and she did not ask for anything, which is the only reason I was able to hear her. I believed one lie would keep everyone together. I thought if I could hold it for one morning, everybody would be safe, and nobody would have to be the person who said no. She was not confessing because she learned I founded Northline. She had made her choice when she looked at the luggage. She was confessing because she finally understood what she had been protecting, not her father's company, but her own terror of being the daughter who let the family fall apart. And she had spent that terror on the one person who married into it by choice. Victor did not accept it. I did not expect him to. Men like Victor do not lose an argument. They change the subject to a stronger one. He reached into his case and produced a single page and laid it face up on my table. Then her testimony no longer matters, he said. Northline already approved the substitution. Here is the consent. The last page of the collateral package. The silver key seal, deep and clean in the wax. That was the moment he lost, and he did it entirely by himself. I did not have to prove he was corrupt. I only had to let him hand a forged instrument to a lender in front of a board member, on the record, by his own choice, to beat his daughter's testimony. Mara Mercer stood up and walked the length of my table. She opened the plastic bag and removed one fragment of the torn navy envelope, the piece with the original wax still fixed to it. She set it beside his page. Then she took the second fragment, the blank interior sheet with the reversed impression, and set that down too. She did not raise her voice. She never once did. Every Northline original has a unique ridge pattern along the outer edge of the seal. It is a serial mark. She touched the original.
This is the pattern from the document destroyed in this house. She touched Victor's page. And this is the same pattern, reversed. The reviewer leaned in. So did the lender's representatives. So did Victor's attorney, and then his attorney sat back and did not lean in again. You cannot copy a wax seal from a photograph, Mara said. You can copy it by pressing the warm original onto a blank sheet and casting from that impression. A cast made that way reproduces the ridge pattern in mirror. It is the one thing a forger cannot correct without the original in hand. She turned the reversed fragment 90 degrees so the reviewer could see the match. This is the impression he took. That is the seal he made from it. Founder consent was never granted. It could not have been.
The founder is sitting at this table and was never asked.
Victor said, "That's a piece of trash from a champagne bucket." "It is," Mara agreed. "It is the piece of trash you created 11 minutes after you tore up a document you had not read." The rest happened in the flat, administrative way that real consequences always happen. The lender's senior representative closed the package and said the substitution was withdrawn from consideration and that submission of a falsified consent instrument would be referred. Hale Development's extension request was denied on the spot. Mara stated the board's position in 2 sentences. Northline's loan protections were terminated effective immediately, and the board would consider a restructuring proposal only if Victor Hale relinquished operational control. The exact thing I had offered him 20 minutes earlier, and he had gambled that page instead. Elena's amended testimony went into the record. Without it, and without the collateral instrument, the emergency claim had nothing left holding it up. My attorney filed to lift the occupancy order that afternoon, and it was lifted before dark. Victor stood in my dining room and asked me the question he had been building toward for 2 hours. "So that's it? You're going to put my family out on the street?" "Your family has a 4-bedroom apartment downtown with the lights on," I said. "You were never asking for a room. You were asking me to finance a lie." The last part of the payoff is the part I still think about, because it was not mine. The lender's representative asked, mildly, how the resident's belongings would be removed. My attorney checked the file and said the moving company was already retained, invoice paid, under the Hale Development account. So the same crew Victor had booked 19 days earlier to carry suitcases into my house for a photograph came back on Saturday morning and carried them out. Nobody cheered. A member of my staff propped the front door open because the movers needed both hands. Elena's aunt asked whether the runner would be damaged. Victor sat in a car in my driveway and did not get out. 6 suitcases went down my curved staircase and across my marble foyer and out through my tall double doors, and the loudest sound in the house was hard plastic wheels on stone. Elena found me in the front room when it was over. "If I had told the truth the first morning," she said, "would it have changed anything?" "It changes what happens next," I said. "It does not erase what already happened." Victor left Hale Development 11 days later. The board's restructuring went forward under professional management, and the crews kept working, which was the only outcome I had ever actually fought for. He did not lose his company because I was richer than he was. He lost it because he would rather manufacture a consent than say out loud that he had failed. Elena left with 1 suitcase. I did not ask her to go, and I did not ask her to stay. And I have wondered, ever since, whether that was restraint or one last locked door. She said she needed to understand why, every single time it mattered, she had chosen her father's fear over the truth, and that she could not do that work while living inside the house she had tried to sign away. We separated. She did not come back a week later in tears because she had learned what my name was worth. That is not what happened, and I would not have believed it if it had. The founder review took 2 months. I kept my seat and lost the anonymity for good. I stopped calling silence protection. When something in my business touches someone I love now, I say it out loud the day I learn it, even when it makes me look smaller, because leaving someone outside a decision is not the same as sheltering them from it. I kept the house. It is not the victory. The victory is that I never turned 91 working people into leverage, never used the debt to punish a frightened old man, and never once let the word family stand in for consent. The library is open again. On the wall beside the door, I hung a small glass frame with the pieces of a navy envelope inside it. I did not restore them. I could have. Restoration is my profession, and those tears would have taken me an afternoon. I left every one of them showing. Underneath, on a plain card, there is one word: consent. Victor believed ownership came from saying a claim loudly enough. Elena believed love could survive one necessary lie. I believed silence could protect everyone. We were all wrong in different ways. A house can be repaired after almost anything. Trust is harder. It does not belong to the loudest person in the room. It belongs to the people who keep choosing the truth when a lie would be easier. What boundary did you learn to protect too late? Tell me in the comments.